Hello and thank you for watching. My name is Heather Alexandra, and I'm here to talk critically about games. In the lead up to E3, there's always a ton of rumors, but one of the best rumors that I heard was about Resident Evil 7. First, they were making another Resident Evil, and it was going to return the series back to its horror roots. Hearing news like that, I expected something like this. Or maybe even something like this.
Why isn't someone doing something about this?
To my surprise, I got something that seemed far more comparable to Hideo Kojima's PT. And while Resident Evil 7 Beginning Hour might have learned a few lessons from that ill-fated Silent Hills demo, the more I played and the more I saw, I realized that Resident Evil 7 actually was channeling the tone and mood of the old games. It was just doing so in a different way. Let's talk about one of the things that made the original Resident Evil so scary: the camera. Older Resident Evil games used pre-rendered backgrounds that deliberately and carefully composed your view of the action. Using these backgrounds and camera positions, it was easy to hide enemies behind corners for jump scares, or to call attention to important environmental objects. In the original Resident Evil, the camera design was combined with two other things: tank controls and tight corridors. Tank controls made it difficult to react to new threats by limiting your mobility, and the enclosed spaces of Spencer Mansion ensured that players would have difficulty avoiding foes. For me, this is what made Resident Evil truly scary. It wasn't the jump scares, although those dogs still are terrifying. It was the fact that I felt fragile, and I didn't feel like I was in control. I felt compromised. This is what later titles in the series abandoned in favor of a more reactive, pulse-pounding type of fear. The threat of an encroaching horde is terrifying, but it's not the same as those quiet moments moving around lost, dark hallways. So, how does Resident Evil 7 head back and capture that original feeling? It does so by using a first-person perspective. A first-person view does one really great thing for horror games. It severely limits what you can and can't see. In tight spaces, using that first-person perspective, you can only really see what's in front of you. Beginning Hour uses this to great effect. Because the game takes place in very limited and enclosed spaces, the first-person view creates a highly claustrophobic feeling. Better, it recaptures that old fear of not knowing what's behind a corner. When we, as players, lack information, we tend to feel less comfortable. The first-person view capitalizes on this by being very deliberate in what we can and can't see. Here's a really good example from the demo. In it, we briefly take the role of a cameraman for a haunted house show, one of those strange ghost hunter type deals. When we enter the house, our attention initially is drawn by our talkative host companion. It ensures that we keep our view centered on him long enough for the producer to exit our line of sight and disappear. When that character moves around the nearby corner, he's not still there. The game has despawned that character and moved him to a new location. But because we don't see that, this whole experience simulates the idea of somebody going missing instantly. And because our view is so limited, it's very easy for the game to accomplish. In fact, the demo is very fond of implying action outside of your view. If you head upstairs, you can encounter some mannequins facing a wall, but if you turn and place them outside your field of vision, when you look back, the dummies have moved and are staring right at you. If you head around the corner and then move back towards the stairs, a new dummy will appear. Now, the dummies aren't actually turning or moving. The models are just being switched or added to the world. But because this happens all outside of our view, the implication of movement is very strong, and that's just enough to create something really unsettling. Beginning Hour uses this a lot in composing its scares, having implied action behind you. For instance, when you head down into the basement to find your companion, you have to climb a ladder. While you're on this ladder, the game prevents you from looking down or to the side, which means that when you get to the bottom and turn around, you can probably be sure that you're seeing what the designers want you to see. Most of you anyway, some of you might have been looking down at your feet. In this case, you see your partner just sort of Blair Witching against the wall. It's manipulative because it limits what you can and can't do, but it shows the designers understand the fundamental strengths of the first-person view. Additionally, like the original game, beginning hour stresses moving through spaces multiple times. This allows the demo to make slight alterations to the environment. On one pass through this hallway, this lamp right here is fine, but when you head back, it begins to flicker. Because beginning hour asks that you navigate and then re-navigate spaces, it adds these little affectations to the game world to make it seem like things are starting to go just a little bit wrong. The demo actually relies on these tricks a little too much. While moments like the restricted movement on the ladder show a command and understanding of what the first-person view can do, we end up with something that's scary, but only once. Because the experience is curated so heavily, one playthrough gives you pretty much everything, and you really begin to see the artifice if you start doing repeat playthroughs. The moment when your partner disappears around the corner, the game doesn't actually let you follow him if you want to. It adds an invisible wall. Beginning Hour has strong fundamentals, but only manages its tone through a highly controlled experience. In some ways, I'm not sure if Beginning Hour gleaned the right lessons from PT. That game was very deliberate as well, using the funneling nature of the house halls and the first-person perspective to set up some very deliberately composed moments. Yet PT, and even the original Resident Evil games, had just enough random factors to make things truly dreadful. In Resident Evil, it came down to things like ammo count, or whether or not you had burned a zombie's body to prevent them from coming back as a deadly, super strong Crimson Head. In PT, it was the random possibility of ghost attacks. That lack of control is really terrifying, and it's so terrifying that it took me like a ton of time to sit and record PT and get this ghost scare right here.
Don't touch that dial now, we're just getting started. Retrieve the rifle.
But Beginning Hour is so tightly organized and managed that while it does achieve the tone of the original series, I don't know if it achieves the same amount of dread. I don't have the same deep feeling of fear in my gut. What does the future hold for Resident Evil? Well, it's really hard to say. Developers have stated that Beginning Hour isn't representative of the final product. In some ways, that's a relief. It means RE7 could find the final touches needed to be genuinely scary. In other ways, I think that could be a disappointment, especially if the designers give up on the strong mood and tone that the demo already established. At the very least, I think it will be a welcome change of pace from RE5 and especially RE6. The demo shows promise. There's strong design to be found when you look for it. And with any luck, the father of the horror genre will show us just why we got so scared in the first place.
Welcome to the family, son.